When you stick with a video game through its many ups and downs, it can often be disappointing to see it suddenly sink into oblivion. It could be a slow descent into mediocrity, one terrible entry, rough development cycles, or even a lack of interest from publishers and developers. Either way, the number of franchises that went from good to awful is way too many to count. So, let's take a look at 15 of them here. Saints Row. At one point, Saints Row was viewed as a fun alternative to Grand Theft Auto. The first game didn't set the world on fire, but received praise for its gameplay and presentation. Saints Row 2 went further beyond with more over-the-top action, extensive character customization, fun melee combat, and the range of weaponry. Then there was Saints Row the Third, what would be considered the series' peak. The storytelling evolved significantly, but it was the sheer insanity, character customization options, activities like insurance fraud, calling in other gang members as backup, and much more that made for a fun experience. Saints Row 4 originally began as an expansion to the third game, but grew into a full game. It was almost obligated to go even bigger and more over the top, adding an alien invasion, superpowers, mechs, companion missions, and much more. With over 1 million copies sold in its first week, it was a massive success. This was followed by Gat Out of Hell, a standalone expansion criticized for its bugs, lackluster side activities, and underwhelming story. Volition would attempt to start fresh with Agents of Mayhem in 2017, incorporating different characters with unique abilities that ultimately failed due to its repetition and bland design. A proper reboot for Saints Row would launch in 2022, but despite praise for its city and gameplay, the story, the excessive bugs and characters ultimately brought it down. Volition would shut down in August of 2023, and the IP was unlikely to see a revival anytime soon. Mass Effect. For those who played the original Mass Effect trilogy, it was an experience unlike any other. The characters and unbreakable bonds formed, the well-realized settings and planets, the excellent combat and abilities, the visuals, and the soundtrack. Each game was a masterpiece in its own right. Mass Effect 3 would falter due to its lackluster endings, which BioWare would address with the expanded cut. However, the backlash was overwhelming with the belief that it led to founders Ray Maziaka and Greg Zeschlik leaving the studio. BioWare went in a different direction with Mass Effect Andromeda, with its Montreal studio, which developed the excellent multiplayer in Mass Effect 3, in charge of development. Upon launch, it was criticized for its storytelling, glitches, uninspired design, and presentation. Reports would emerge of a rough development cycle, from scrapped plans for procedurally generated planets to engine issues. While the series did receive the Legendary Edition, all eyes are on the next game to return Mass Effect to its brilliance. Alone in the Dark. Alone in the Dark pioneered 3D survival horror and even influenced the development of Resident Evil, but failed time and time again to remain relevant. The first game, released in 1992, was a masterpiece for its design, its soundtrack, and its storytelling. Alone in the Dark continued that trend despite feeling less scary and despite some iffy ports on the PS1 and Sega Saturn. It was still lauded as one of the best PC titles ever made. Alone in the Dark 3 capped off the trilogy with better controls and gameplay, though it still didn't reach the first game's height in terms of horror. Infogrames attempted to revive the franchise in 2001 with Alone in the Dark: The New Nightmare, offering a unique canon and emphasizing light as a core mechanic. While appreciated for its presentation, it was ultimately an average experience that didn't really live up to the original. However, it was practically Game of the Year compared to Alone in the Dark 2008, with its horrible presentation, technical issues, and overall storytelling attracting criticism. Atari's attempt to discredit the reviews didn't help either. Alone in the Dark: Illumination followed, a third-person shooter with co-op, randomly generated rooms, and enemy placements that fails in every way possible. While the recent Alone in the Dark is far superior, it's still nothing special, whether in horror or combat. Crackdown. Few franchises have seen quicker downfalls than Crackdown. The first game launched in 2007 and began well enough, offering a huge sandbox and powers to wreak havoc as players battled fictional gangs in Pacific City. With the freedom to take down each kingpin as players saw fit and drop in co-op for up to 2 players, it garnered critical acclaim and sold 1.5 million copies in its first year. It was followed by Crackdown 2, which neither improved on the original nor added anything to make it noteworthy, outside of 4-player co-op. The visuals and unnecessary multiplayer also didn't help. However, the series' real downfall would arrive with Crackdown 3, announced in 2014 and facing multiple delays before launching in 2019. promising the use of Microsoft Azure for extensive destruction, where players could destroy anything, the tech was ultimately confined to Wrecking Zone, a multiplayer mode which quickly died off. The campaign followed the same structure as the first game, allowing players to take out kingpins in any order, but failed to introduce any new ideas. Its repetitive nature and design that felt stuck in the past weighed it down. Star Fox. Nintendo seems like it has a strong record for treating its franchises well, until we look at Star Fox. The first game is incredible, offering an arcade shoot-'em-up experience unique to the Super Nintendo. Even though Star Fox 2 was cancelled until its release with the SNES Classic, we got Star Fox 64, which was better in every way. New vehicles, all-range mode, incredible missions, Star Wolf, it's easily the series' peak. The series took a detour with Star Fox Adventures in 2002 on the GameCube, opting for an action-adventure approach with only a few segments devoted to the classic shoot-'em-up action. Despite the drastic departure, it still received positive reviews. Star Fox Assault would return to the more traditional format, but despite some interesting additions, it failed to elevate the series to new heights. Star Fox Command on the Nintendo DS opted for a mix of strategy and action that was pretty decent despite its repetitive elements. Nintendo took another crack at the more traditional formula with Star Fox Zero, developed alongside Platinum Games. The controls, lack of new ideas, and relatively short length faced criticism, and it became the lowest rated game in the series at the time. Sales were equally terrible with less than 500,000 copies sold. Metal Gear Solid. Okay, this one is a controversial entry, we admit. There has hardly been an awful Metal Gear game. Right from its first entry all the way back in 1987 to 2015's The Phantom Pain, the series has been nothing short of extraordinary. Be it the tense action of Metal Gear Solid 1, the information war in Metal Gear Solid 2, the theme of loyalty in Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, the emotional storytelling in Peace Walker, to the hollowness and emptiness of The Phantom Pain, the series has been delivering one hit after another. However, the jump from great to awful was pretty quick. After the Metal Gear developer was shut down by Konami, they followed it up with the disastrous Metal Gear Survive, a survival game with zombies. Now, survival and zombies aren't really new concepts to Metal Gear games. Metal Gear Solid 3 had survive elements, and Metal Gear Solid 5 had zombie-like elements after all. But Survive was such a mess that it was hardly worthy of the title of Metal Gear. Had it been titled Survive the Zombie Game, it would have probably done much better. Fortunately, Metal Gear will soon be back in the form of a remake of Snake Eater, so we're hopeful that the series will be back to its best real quick. Turac. First-person shooters weren't unique when Turac launched, but a first-person shooter with dinosaurs? Yeah, sign us up. First released in 1997 for the Nintendo 64, it became a massive success for publisher Acclaim with its stellar visuals, despite slowdown issues, and fun gory action. It was followed by Turac 2 Seeds of Evil, which was somehow even better, improving on the original's enemy AI and level design, though performance remained a stickler. In 1999, Acclaim attempted a multiplayer spin-off with Turac Rage Wars, which faced mixed reviews for its lack of compelling single-player content and overall bland approach. Thankfully, Turac 3 Shadows of Oblivion followed, and while a step down from its predecessors in almost every way, it still offered some fun gameplay. Unfortunately, the series fell off with Turac Evolution, a prequel to the first title that received below-average reviews for its lack of polish, poor level design, and visuals. Disney Interactive Studios attempted to reboot the franchise with Turac in 2008, but despite selling over 1 million copies in 2 months, it received middling reviews. A sequel was in the works but ultimately cancelled, and the franchise has seen nothing else outside of the recent remasters from Night Dive Studios. Madden. Madden is one of the more long-running and successful sports franchises in gaming, starting in 1998 with John Madden Football on the MS-DOS, Apple II, and Commodore 64, and selling over 130 million copies as of 2018. While its titles were well received throughout the years, depending on the platform, it eventually began drawing criticism for removing popular features and doing the bare minimum year in and year out. The introduction of the Ultimate Team in Madden NFL 10 and increased emphasis on microtransactions while other modes suffered further fueled criticism. However, the lack of competition meant fans had nowhere to go for their American football fix. By the time Madden NFL 21 hit, even critics had soured on the franchise with its numerous bugs, technical issues, and lackluster franchise mode. Madden NFL 22 and NFL 23 seemed to take minimal steps forward, and even with the recent Madden NFL 25, It feels like the series is just treading water. Fable. Lionhead Studios may have overhyped the first Fable to ridiculous lengths. However, there's no denying the fun combat, the storytelling, and cool mechanics, like the hero's appearance changing depending on what they ate or their actions. Fable 2 built upon its success in almost every way, offering a multi-year journey where players could acquire property, take on jobs, alter their appearance based on decisions. By comparison, Fable 3 didn't feel nearly as ambitious with its quests, combat, and story on top of technical issues. Lionhead would release an on-rail Connect spin-off called Fable The Journey, which was received about as well as it sounds. Fable would receive a remaster in 2013 with Fable Anniversary, featuring revamped visuals, though it was panned for its excessive bugs. Then followed Fable Legends, or rather, it didn't. The co-op action RPG was announced in 2012 and would use Xbox Cloud tech. It was later confirmed to have a free-to-play model, but faced numerous delays throughout its lifespan before being cancelled in March of 2016. Lionhead Studios was also shuttered, and while the franchise is making a comeback with Playground Games' upcoming reboot, the lack of details and a solid release date is already drawing skepticism about its future. Silent Hill. Whether you enjoyed Silent Hill: The Short Message or not, there's no denying that the series went down much before its release. Silent Hill 1 to 3 were excellent, and while Silent Hill 4: The Room took steps to distinguish itself, the story still received praise despite some repetition and gameplay changes. Silent Hill Homecoming, which draws some inspiration from the awful live-action film, is where the decline started. Silent Hill: Shattered Memories was received somewhat better, but as a reimagination of the first game, it only highlighted the stark difference in quality and horror. Silent Hill Downpour existed, and the less spoken about Silent Hill Book of Memories, the better. Konami couldn't even deliver a competent HD collection. What with its performance issues, glitches, and whatnot, no fog in Silent Hill 2? Seriously? Much has also been said about PT and the mess surrounding the cancellation of Silent Hills. Konami is reviving the series with several new titles, from Silent Hill F and Townfall to a remake from Bloober Team, but fans still wait to see if they'll meet expectations. Even if it's an interactive TV series, Silent Hill Ascension instilled the most confidence. Mega Man X. Many good old IPs are just ignored due to a multitude of reasons, but when it comes to the cult classics, Mega Man X is an intriguing case. It's a shame because it offered a more mature dystopian storyline and setting, with faster-paced gameplay and memorable characters like Zero. Following the stellar Mega Man X4, Mega Man X5 started to lean too hard into the difficulty without providing any new ideas. Mega Man X6 fumbled by not advancing the narrative and implementing the Nightmare to render mechanics like Reploid Rescue more tedious. While Mega Man X7 attempted to make various wholesale changes, shifting from 2D to 3D while featuring character switching and a new Reploid Hunter in Axel, it was handled poorly. Even one of the best parts of the franchise, the music, felt like a downgrade from previous games. Mega Man X Command Mission tried going to the RPG route to mixed results, and while Mega Man X8 was not an improvement over the 7th game, the story was nonsensical at this point. The last major title was Mega Man X Dive, a free-to-play mobile game with all the annoying nonsense associated with the medium while feeling repetitive and bland. Duke Nukem. It's funny that Duke Nukem began as a side-scrolling platforming series before Duke Nukem 3D debuted and obliterated expectations of its levels, weaponry, and gameplay. Despite the Doom influence, it set itself apart thanks to no small part to its protagonist. It would receive third-person spin-offs like Time to Kill and Zero Hour, but a proper sequel was announced in 1997. With Duke Nukem Forever, 3D Realms seemed poised to deliver a sequel that was bigger in almost every way. What followed was delay after delay, engine changes, and constantly shifting plans across 14 years. It was only after Gearbox Studios purchased the IP from 3D Realms and completed development to launch it in May of 2011. What followed was one of the worst games due to poor production values, lackluster exploration, bugs, boring gameplay, and an underwhelming arsenal and dated references. Duke Nukem would make sporadic appearances in other titles like DLC, which allowed for playing as him through Bulletstorm. So there's also that. Dino Crisis. Mixing Resident Evil survival horror with dinosaurs seemed like a recipe for disaster, but Dino Crisis made it work. Facing off against more nimble threats compared to zombies, who can also disarm protagonist Regina, also brought new challenges. However, instead of sticking to the same approach with the sequel, Dino Crisis 2 opted for a more fast-paced action approach, The presentation, combat, and weapon variety earned it considerable acclaim and sales. And then, Dino Crisis 3 happened, adapting a sci-fi approach. It was heavily panned by critics for its awful camera, enemy variety, and underwhelming presentation. Nothing has been done to revive the franchise since then, and no, Exoprimal, which has its share of issues, doesn't count. Dead Rising, another franchise that was handled poorly and lays by the wayside after its disastrous outing? Say it ain't so. Unfortunately, that's the case with Dead Rising. The first game took inspiration from George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead, delivering a unique sandbox experience where photojournalist Frank West attempted to expose the conspiracy behind a zombie outbreak. With hundreds of zombies, unique challenges, a timed approach, and the ability to use anything as a weapon, it became a critical and commercial hit. Dead Rising 2 offered much of the same, albeit in a new setting and with new features like custom weapons, multiplayer, and weapon combos. The multiplayer didn't work at launch, though, and various bugs dragged down the experience, but it was received generally well. Dead Rising 3 followed, introducing another new protagonist with even more zombies, a much larger world, crafting combo weapons on the fly, and making combo vehicles. This was all well and good, but technical issues persisted, while the story was nothing to write home about. The franchise saw its downfall with Dead Rising 4, which saw the return of Frank West but removed the timer, adding it back later with paid DLC, and failed to really evolve the formula. It underperformed, with another sequel reportedly cancelled. Ninja Gaiden. The Ninja Gaiden series began as a beat-em-up series for arcades in 1988, but evolved into a side-scrolling action platformer. Despite criticism for its high difficulty, the NES trilogy received praise for its gameplay, level designs, visuals, and storytelling. However, the peak of the franchise would arrive in 2004, when Team Ninja, headed by Tomonobu Itagaki, reimagined it as a fast-paced 3D hack-and-slash title. The brutal difficulty remained, but the movement and abilities alongside its stellar presentation made it an instant classic. It would receive a rework with Ninja Gaiden Black and a PS3 release in Ninja Gaiden Sigma, the latter attracting criticism for its many changes. A true sequel would arrive in 2008 with Ninja Gaiden 2, and despite not having the most sweeping changes, it did offer new mechanics like dismembered enemies who could continue fighting until obliterated. Unfortunately, issues between the publisher and Itagaki would lead to the latter's departure. Ninja Gaiden 3 was thus directed by Fumihiko Yasuda and faced criticism for its underwhelming combat, laughable difficulty, terrible camera, repetitive encounters, and unnecessary multiplayer. An enhanced version called Razor's Edge would arrive later, addressing many of these criticisms while offering new content, but it still couldn't match its predecessors. Yasuda and the team would redeem themselves with the Neo series, while Ninja Gaiden would receive the Master Collection. The latter faced criticism for using the Sigma versions of Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2, while having other technical issues but improved with patches. Sadly, the legend of Ryo Hayabusa is pretty much dead, with sporadic references in Neo and little else. Hey, did you know that we at GamingBolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and hit that bell, and let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.